the rear portion of it that backs up to a residential subdivision. And we feel that this would be an appropriate rezoning request because it does provide a transition from that residential subdivision to the most intense commercial district that you have, which is the C5 Highway Arterial District. I know so we'd ask you to approve that. I know there have been some questions about the rezoning and more particularly about the property in particular. The first thing, and what we plan on doing in this R4 section of this property is townhomes, and based on the layout of the land, we estimate somewhere between 28 and 36 units. But to address some of the questions that have come up, I know there have been some. There is something referred to as a blue line stream in the area. That is something that is common. It has to be. It's just an area that has to be monitored by TDEC and during construction to make sure that state and federal guidelines are followed. So what happens in that process? Any kind of construction, whether it's R4 or C5. You're going to have to go to TDEC, get your permitting done, give them your plans, make sure that you've got the appropriate water quality buffers like silt fence and vegetation, that kind of thing. And TDEC monitors that throughout the construction process. Mr. McKay, the engineer, is here. If any of that is incorrect, I'm sure he can let everybody know. But that's my understanding of the process. I know there has been some, and just so everybody knows, there is some excavating equipment on the property. My clients are not doing anything right now. That excavating equipment is actually there because there's a sewer line under there. The gymnastics facility across the street is going to be hooking into the sewer main over there. So that's why that equipment is there if any of that comes up. Another question that I know we had was regarding access to the property. And we're not subdividing this property into two lots. That's not DJ Development's plan at this time. So they could actually run with one access road to the entire property or one entrance to Madison Street. If they were to subdivide, there's plenty of room to put two entrances in. And I don't know if anybody did not get it. Mr. Wilson sent out a copy of just a layout of the land showing where the water quality buffers would have to be, where the tree line is, where the potential entrances and that kind of thing. If they were to put like a strip center up in the front and then go back to the back, where those entrances would be. If anybody did not get that, I do have copies available. So with all that said, I'd just like I think that at the Planning Commission, we heard some concerns from neighbors, and to address those, it seemed almost like those concerns were more, we don't want you developing all the way to the back of the property. We're afraid that it's going to be close to our property and the trees are going to be removed and the stream's going to be interfered with. All the setbacks and that kind of thing have to be followed regardless of whether we're in R4 or C5. But and the entirety of the property within the rules can be developed. If it stays C5, it's just going to be that more intense highway arterial district use as opposed to the R4 transitioning. So with that said, I would like to ask you to vote for this request. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ross. Anyone have questions for Mr. Ross? Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was not feeling well last week, and that's why I was not here. Apologize for that. So the connections are just going to be on Madison Street. Is that right?
That's correct. It will not connect through the villages in any way.
Okay.
The only way we have to connect is to Madison Street.
Okay. That's my main question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. If I remember correctly from the Regional Planning Commission meeting too, the bigger portion of what was going to be developed was closer to the northeast portion, correct?
That's correct. Most of the development will be kind of over towards the side and to the front to avoid that blue line stream. They'll stay within all setback lines, and that stream will push it further to the east.
And you may have said this already when you mentioned the 28 to 36 units, you are referring to townhomes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Ross? Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for bringing all of that good information about this.
You're welcome. Thank you, ma'am.
My question is, and I see it's Madison Street on here, so the entrance is going to be on the side of the property? you turn off of Madison to get into the townhouses?
Yes, ma'am, under that proposed layout, that's how it would be. You know, we've set that up as a proposed layout. We think that's the best way to do it. If somebody were to get in there and there's, you know, a
Oh, I think that's a good
issue, then that might change, but that's the plan right now.
I think it's a good idea. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 73? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 73? Please, sir, if you would come forward, give us your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
My name is David Gillespie. I live at 2681 Wynwood Court. Our property borders more than 315 feet of this proposed development. It's only fitting that today's Groundhog Day because we're once again debating something that's been settled repeatedly over the years by this council. So forgive me if these comments sound familiar and repetitive. Previous proposals for this tract fell through, including one for self-storage warehouses. There was another one for a plaza of retail shops. Now they're trying to put in townhouses or apartments. The staff review sheet describes this property as a tract that's wooded in the southern portion. It's wooded because the city previously reviewed this property and marked the tributaries with orange marking tape, which recognizes the 25-foot undisturbed barriers of natural vegetation around these blue lines. And they're lines, not line. It's streams, not stream, singular. But that's recognized around that boundary for land clearing. And that was in case SR 28-2008 most recently. DJ Development is now proposing to clear those trees away. The city already established there can be no further clearing of the trees and nothing should be built on the back of this lot. During the last 2 meetings, we heard a lot of familiar phrases like blue lines can be re-engineered. There are no environmental concerns. And yet the city does have a standard. There are regulations and codes that clearly protect this property. In DJ Development's letter to you, they acknowledged only the blue line stream in the southwest corner of the property. Photos presented in the last 2 meetings only showed this property from afar, as seen from the middle of Madison without actually getting into the wood line and seeing what's there. The pictures and slides that we provided show that there are many streams, natural springs, retention ponds, and culverts. It's also worth noting there's a utility buffer yard requirement along the east boundary of this property. And when you take all of that into account, a full 30-foot landscape buffer yard shall, according to the city zoning ordinance, be placed inward from the utility and drainage easements, leaving no room for 36 to 44 housing units. At the Planning Commission, some people actually expressed that R4 is more favorable than C5. I wholeheartedly disagree with this case. In this case, C5 requires buffer zone Charlie, while R4 requires Bravo. Therefore, remaining as C5 will keep construction closer to Madison and away from the blue lines, while it's also creating a better buffer between the development and the village's neighborhood. So why are we so protective of these blue lines? Over the years, with so much construction along the stretch of Madison, the streams have been greatly impacted, expanding, carving new paths, and eroding banks. We are now separated on our property from the back quarter of our yard. We can't even mow back there because we can't get to it because of the 2 deep streams that have now cut through our property. Erosion is so great it's toppling trees along the widening banks. Water flows continuously through here. It's not just a storm drain. And with heavy rain, the banks swell, yet somehow the water system continues to protect our neighborhood from severe flooding. I have no doubt if this was happening in your backyards, some of you would probably say not in my backyard. We have a 2-level deck facing the proposed development, 20 feet away. We're 900 feet from the drive-through at Katie's Tacos. We're 600 feet from the drive-through at Sango Pharmacy. And a warehouse with trucks loading and unloading all hours of the night. The whole cul-de-sac enjoys startling crashes of Monday morning dumpster dumps. But that's life. We understand progress. The city is growing. We understand that this great city's growth and the need for housing is tremendous. However, this is just not the place. Don't allow apartments to push over the wood line and tuck into the rear of this delicate watershed. If the developer intends to respect these blue lines, then where will these units be built? How will they squeeze this number of units into the area without destroying the system or exacerbating erosion issues that we already have? Don't just take my word for it. Head on down to Golly G's, grab a cup of coffee, and step over in the wood line and take a look at what's going on there. It's not just a stream. There are many streams going through this property, and it's hard to imagine how anyone could build on it. And for that reason, I would ask you to vote against this rezoning. Are there any questions I may answer?
Thank you, Mr. Gillespie. Councilperson Smith, you have a question. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Sir, thank you for your explanation against this. My question to you is, what would you like to see there? If you don't want to see townhouses, what would be your idea or should be?
And again, it's not a matter of townhouses or being a C5 development. The issue is, if it was a C5 development, it's going to be closer to Madison. And it's not going to interfere with the drainage that's already taking place.
Have you seen the draft? They have a buffer.
Yes, and you'll notice on this new draft with this buffer, there's only one stream on the west side of the property. Only one stream that they're paying attention to. Whereas if you look at the photos that were sent, you can see in very great detail that there are many streams going through the back of that property. And again, it's not like the streams are at the very edge of the property where they are in that 30-foot buffer, and it's all the way around. So it just squeezes in 30 feet all the way around. There's just no room to put anything in that area.
Have you ever thought about they might build up and not out?
Well, they did say that these were going to be 2-story townhouses with garages. And yeah, that's an issue as well, because we're already looking at having to put up stuff over some of our windows upstairs. Because normally the wood line protects us from anyone viewing.
So you don't have a problem with the townhouses being built. You just have a problem with where it's
I
sitting.
do. I do have a problem with the townhouses being built because building townhouses require that they have to be offset much further from Madison. So by the very nature of rezoning this into R4, that's saying, okay, well, it has to be that far back, and there's just no place to put them there. So I would ask that it not be rezoned.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, how long has your neighborhood, this Windward neighborhood, been, how old are the homes?
I believe that the first homes were built around 1990.
Oh, so they're older than I thought.
Yes.
Okay. I drove the neighborhood, so they didn't look that old. Okay.
Yes, they were built in 1990, and there have been, you've seen there's already 3 developments that have come in over the years, as well as the widening of Madison into 4 lanes. And it's you roll with the punches, you know what you're getting there. But in this case, the city had always, told us and our neighbors that there could be no further development on there. And that's why the warehouse that's there has such a strange property line as it is, because they had to avoid the stream that's there.
Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you said if it stayed C5, they would have to develop closer to Madison Street. But I mean, as you've seen, even right along there, there's been strip behind strips. So I don't
Right.
know that that's necessarily true when you think about it that way, because they could still do something, even if they left it all as C5, they could still layer it to where there was different things in there. That I don't know that. Thinking about it kind of from that angle, it could still easily be turned into something back there, even if it wasn't rezoned today.
Yeah, that is an ongoing concern. We know that, if you have a property, you're going to want to develop on it. I understand that. And again, our major fuss here is just simply about that wood line and the standoff distance from those streams. And I think that by actually rezoning it, it's an encouragement to go ahead and do a lot more damage there than if it were C5 closer to Madison.
Well, that's where I'm saying I don't know that it would necessarily be closer to Madison because it would still be the same parcel of land. So even if they developed it here, whether they developed it as C5 or developed it as R4, it would still be the same area of that land. And, that was one of the reasons I did ask the question, which part of it that they're planning on developing. And it is that upper north part. So it's not, and if need be, I can
Well,
ask for
if you-
clarification on the rebuttal, but it's not
Right.
that further south portion, which would be, all the way to the back. And, like you mentioned, they do have to have the 30-foot buffer as well.
Right. If you look back to the original proposal and you look at the grid lines that they put on there, that slide that has the grid lines on it, it's covering all of the wood line. It's not covering any of the other portion of that plot. So
When you say original proposal, which one are you referring to?
the proposal, when we first got notification
Okay.
that this was going to be taking place for the Planning Commission and now here,
Okay. That was just making sure what you were, are you talking about where it's got the lines going across it?
yes.
That's because it's the all one parcel as far as for the
Right.
rezoning.
Mhm.
So I think that
Right.
might be what you're looking at on that. But like I said, what I did ask the question was what area they were planning on putting that in. And I was listening for that at the Regional Planning Commission, and that was why I re-asked tonight because they had said that the
Right.
other day.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just remember you said that the setback for C5 versus the distance from R4, they were different, right? What was
Right.
what was that
There's a
difference?
Charlie zone and there's a Bravo zone. So Charlie, for the C5, requires a lot more standoff distance, especially once an analysis done of the number of streams that are in that area. There's a lot further standoff distance. If it is rezoned as R4, then you don't have those same limitations. It becomes a little bit closer. You have a little bit less buffer zone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 73? Our code allows for rebuttal. If you spoke in favor or would like to speak to rebut anything that was said against ordinance 73, you can come forward. Our rules allow for one person to speak 3 minutes. If you'll give us your name and address, you have 3 minutes.
Just making sure I can have a rebuttal.
Mhm.
Cal McKay, McKay Merchant Company Engineering, 1545 Madison Street. We're the engineers, been helping them with it. We also designed both properties to the east and the property to the west. We had what's called a hydraulic determination and a wetland study done on both sides, and there was no indication of any additional streams other than one that were shown. Actually, a bulk of this property was part of the property to the east, to the west. And all that was permitted and through TDEC, and there were no other streams identified at that time. Obviously, moving forward, we'll do another stream determination, and if there's any that show up other than these, then we'll apply the buffers. But the buffers don't differentiate if they're C5 or R4. They're both the same. And I've been working with them since they bought this in 2015 or 16, and there's never been any application for storage units or anything that's ever been denied on the property.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you. Can you clarify a little bit what he was referring to with the Charlie Bravo setbacks?
That I think he's referring to a landscape buffer, and that is correct. An R4 next to a R2 is a B buffer, and a C5 next to an R2 property is a C buffer. And they vary in widths, but it's not necessarily that one's wider than the other. You can go smaller with the R4, but you can also be at the same as the C5.
Okay, thank you.
The smaller buffers require more dense plantings is the difference.
Councilperson Smith,
Thank
you're
you, Mayor.
recognized.
Thank you, sir. Looking at this map, I heard him say that the apartments were gonna be close to Madison Street, but looking at the map, it seems to me that the parking lot would be closer to Madison Street. Am I correct? not the houses. They won't be close to Madison Street.
There'll
The
be
apart-
like a
the,
row, there'll be like a row of commercial buildings in the front and then,
right here.
yes, ma'am. And
Those
then,
are parking spaces, right?
yes, ma'am.
And they're closer to Madison Street, and the apartments will be setback, right?
Yes, ma'am. Back
Okay.
behind those yellow or
Okay.
brownish type buildings.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. McKay. Real quick, how familiar are you with the blue streams in this area?
Oh, we deal with them every day.
Oh, awesome. So, is there a possibility maybe you missed something?
Actually, the state, we hire a sub-consultant to go out there and do these hydraulic determinations and wetland studies. And then they provide their study to the state, and the state usually comes back, excuse me, and follows up behind them to assure that they've done the study correctly.
Okay.
We just recently, the property to the east, a couple of years ago, we designed that and had a hydraulic determination done to it, and there was nothing downstream which would drain across this property that was identified as a blue line stream.
Okay. Okay. I'm just,
Just
Yep.
because they're ditches and carry water doesn't necessarily mean they're
That
blue
they're
line
stream.
streams.
okay. Gotcha. And then I guess with the buffer zone and the proposed layout, I know, in the very rear of the property, closer to the backyards of the community, there's a proposed 20-foot buffer. Would that be different in a C5? Because I think that's what people are trying to clarify, like the exact, like a distance.
The landscape buffers are different, and
Okay.
off the top of my head, I don't know what the minimum
This-
distances are, but
Mhm.
they can vary from 5 feet to 30 feet.
Okay.
But the building setbacks are the same in C5 and R4, and they're 25 feet.
Mhm.
And I think that was kind of our thought, that since a building can't go inside that, then we would just leave it as a buffer in the R4 scenario. C5 scenario, that may change.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McKay.
Thank you.
If you are against ordinance 73 and would like to offer Sir rebuttal, we allow for one person to come up and rebut what you just heard, and you'd have 3 minutes. Okay, we're now ready for item 2, ordinance 74, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Chris Blackwell Construction. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 74? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 74? Item 3, ordinance 75, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Concord Ventures Group, Richard Garrett, agent. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 75? Mr. Garrett, if you give us your name and address, you have 5 minutes.
All right. Richard Garrett, 1488 Collinsview Way. And just appreciate the opportunity to just tell you a little bit about my project over there on Oak Street and B Street. So I own several parcels, 185 Oak Street and 191 Oak Street, and I manage the property on 506 B Street. All three are quadplexes. And I recently found out that when I acquired those properties that I also had 0.4 of an acre. And what I'm looking to do is just rezone it from R3 to R4 so that I can build 6-unit townhouses. There'll be 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms with a garage. And I'm open to any questions. I've spoken to a couple of y'all individually and shared my thoughts and experiences in that area at the Regional Planning Commission. But like I said, I'm open to any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for Mr. Garrett? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 75? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 75? Item 4, ordinance 76, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Rick Rita Holmes. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 76? If you will give us your name and address, you have 5 minutes.
Mayor, City Council, Ricky Rita, 2510 Lylewood Road, Woodlawn. Hello, everyone tonight. I've got some C2 property on 41A. We are now putting townhouses on it. There's 30 doors there. There's a 2 acres behind it that lines up pretty well with this property. We would like to continue on. It's 20 doors. We sit up next to R3 now, so that where we're building our townhouses, we're already touching R3. We're asking to remove the R1 and go to the C2. We have 3 houses facing us that are R1. Everything else around us is R3 and commercial. So extending the commercial back 2 acres, letting us have these extra doors, I think it would benefit the city, turn some tax roll that's been sitting for 40 years. I grew up over here, and there's been no big taxes on this property for 40 years. We need the doors. So I'm here asking for your vote tonight. Any questions?
Thank you. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rita, my question would be, if what you're planning on building is residential units, why did you request C2 versus R4?
I thought since we had the R3 already touching the C2, we had already got past the R4 because we're just bringing the C2 back and we're still touching on R. So
I mean, but I think you could, I know that you previously came through with it as an R4. So I just didn't know if what you're planning on doing would have been the same for R4. That's where my question
I
is.
can explain it.
Okay.
Somewhere around this term, and I'm going to say it was 18, the regional commissioners and the staff, they come up with commercial. C2 couldn't always be townhouses or apartments. It could only be R4. Well, there's that everybody recognizes it. There's an analyst that speaks for the banks, Essel Charles. He watches all this. He studies it. He was telling everybody we was in a major lot shortage. So at that time, the regional decided that C2 property could then be townhouses or apartments also. And it kept all this zoning from coming up in front of us. We would never be ahead of the game right now if they wouldn't have made that rule. And I believe it was in early 18. But that's the reason why I went R4, because you couldn't build on C2 back then.
Well, I just didn't know why this time, though, if what you're planning on doing was.
There was no reason. My rhyme was we was already touching R3 this time. So we already had the R done. Sometimes to conform, you want a little bit of housing mixed with the commercial, mixed with the residential. Well, we only have 3 residential houses looking at us. Everything else is already R2, R3 on the north side, the east side.
But what you're planning on doing is residential, correct?
I'm looking to do the townhouses, yes.
Okay. I guess
I don't think it was a trick question. You can build on either one of them. And I don't think at the time the C2 could build apartments at that time.
like I said, I'm asking on this one today.
Yes.
You know, why we,
Yes, ma'am.
why, if that's what you're intending on doing.
I'm building townhouses, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rita, I spoke to you the other night about the question I brought up last week to the Planning Commission concerning where the access would be. And I would like for the other council members here that for you to continue the townhomes where the access would be for the traffic to get in and out of that.
Thank you for reminding me, because
You're
that was
welcome.
supposed to be in my speech. So now we have the townhouses. We have 2 exits. We have one exit on 41A, and we have one that's on Idlewild Drive, but it's directly in front of
The cul-de-sac.
Sequoia. It's in front of Sequoia. The small road does not have a connection to it for a driveway as we speak. The C2 where we're speaking, it does have the connection onto Idlewild Drive, and it's in the middle up there by the intersection. It's not on the thin part. If we put our 7 houses that are now approved to be there with the R1, those would exit down there on that lower end of that cul-de-sac. But at this time, we could use the same tie outs that we have, so we'd have 2 ways out.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I'd just like to, I drove the area And I was just wondering, and I know that this is non-binding, but as I see the apartments coming in, there's truly a lack of green space. And if I'm buying a townhouse, there's no place for those kids to play. Are you planning on doing any, I mean, this is a big development now as you put them all together. Is there gonna be anything other than the driveway right up to the house, to the front door kind of space in this area? In this whole, if you put it all together, because you all.
The way that it lays, it's 20 doors, and I don't think there's any playgrounds associated with it at this time.
I mean, because now that's a big area, all one, I'm looking at it as all one big, not just this particular one.
Yes,
So.
we do have we have the transit that the city operates here in Montgomery County that stops right in front of this. And we've got the new park where they're fixing to put about $4 million into Stoke Field, and that's going to make an awful nice area for these kids and everyone to play.
Am I going to be able to walk to it?
With the new sidewalks, we will. They have installed the sidewalks from there to
Okay.
Stoke Field, but I know they're not the most favorite, but we need these doors.
Okay.
We need them.
Oh, I'm not opposed to the doors.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to be clear, it's not the doors. It's just as you make the doors, maybe make a place for the kids to play and not just the dogs.
Right. I went back to pay attention, and I listened to the executive meeting, and there's no difference from the townhouses to the apartments as far as how many doors you can put. They're all the same, so it don't matter what you put there. There's no more being apartments. It's 20 doors, and it's only 20 doors. I think that was one of the questions.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Rita.
Thank you, guys.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 76? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 76? Next item, item 5, ordinance 77, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Jonathan Blick. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 77? Mr. Blick, if you give us your name and address, you have 5 minutes.
Jonathan Blick, 2015 Mossy Oak Circle. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight. So this is a commercial property that we've put in front of you guys before. I know that Tricia brought it up at the last one. That was with the snowstorm last year. So we pushed it back a couple times, and that's why it's so fresh on y'all's mind that y'all have seen before. What we've done now is we've just done the vacant lot. We think that might be more appealing to you guys to rezone to the C2, which it neighbors, which is the old Rite Aid. Currently, I think that's unoccupied. I'm not sure what the plan is there. But our plan would be to kind of use it as a mixed use. I know y'all had a lot of people in front of you last week coming from the technical colleges. We think that would be a good fit for them. Maybe they could have a residence in the rear and then operate their own business. Maybe they could open their own business and run it. Since everybody likes working from home, why wouldn't you like that? So, we think it's a good opportunity to either have a home in the rear or a home above the business. And then we're right there on Kroger parking lot. So I feel like it would be a good C2 for the area. So, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Blick. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 77? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 77? Ma'am, if you'll give us your name and address, you have 5 minutes.
Diana Richardson, 225 Liberty Parkway. 2 doors down from where they want to rezone it to commercial. I've been in that neighborhood since 98. And it's not just a house, it's a home. Richard C. and Ruth King Fry owned the home. They bought it in 1952, 72 years ago. When they passed, it went on to their son, James R. Fry. And we lived there together, and then he passed away 2021. And I've been there by myself since. We have everything in that house And when they put Kroger in there, Miss Fry did not want it. But she finally accepted it and went on, and it's just gone downhill. The trash is everywhere. The traffic is horrid. The speed limit down Liberty Parkway is 20 miles an hour, and they never do 20. It's always 30. They got one block there, and they just gun it and go. My grandkids can't play out in the front yard anymore. So you do any more commercial over there, and it's only going to get worse. So that's pretty much my objections. Last year, there were many of the neighbors here, but tonight they couldn't make it. They either had to work, be out on post, something has come up. So I came down here to speak against it.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Anyone have a question for Ms. Richardson? Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Richardson, thank you for sharing your views. So you just don't want to see any commercial over there in the neighborhood. It's too close to your home. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't want any more. It's not just me. It's
I know. I've had some other ones to call me as well.
right.
So I know.
And, it's 2 doors down from me. It gets, I mean, I've got Kroger across the street now, which I have, of course, dealt with all these years. The trash has just been horrible again, but,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
okay.
Any other comment or question for Ms. Richardson? Seeing none, anyone else in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 77? If you're in favor of ordinance 77, would like to offer rebuttal, we have room for one person. You have 3 minutes. Mr. Blick, give us your name again, please, sir.
Jonathan Blick. Just to reiterate, this was one of the leftover lots from when the Kroger was subdivided. It was actually a part of Rite Aid. For whatever reason at the time, they cut that from Rite Aid, the Rite Aid development there. And so this is just a kind of a leftover lot, and we're trying to get it to C2. We could build a home on the property right now, and we would probably gear it towards more of a carriage style house that somebody could probably operate a home business from. But we just think that the C2 zoning would be more appropriate. I think that's all that we have to rebuttal.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I wrote down last week that it's 3 units. Was that what they're giving you historically, or is that what you were planning toward?
That is if we were to build townhomes, not a commercial development. But I think that, whatever they estimate is a good estimation. We haven't looked at it. I would think that a duplex you could do maybe, just because it wouldn't require a site plan. And, but the commercial development is what we're gearing towards. I feel better about offering opportunity to a younger person that could live at the property and maybe operate a business, if not own the business, and then grow larger to where they need a larger property.
And I appreciate that because I think that's something that we sorely need in town. Mm-hmm. So you do intend on doing somewhat residential in the area, not just like as of today.
We do build residential, but the plan is, I would think more of the commercial would be best suited because it fronts Kroger parking lot. I'm not going to build a house looking right at Kroger parking lot, although it would be easy access for that residence. It's not really ideal to build something in a large parking lot of, let's say, 300 to 500 cars if it was full, so. But,
all right, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Blick.
Thank you.
If you are against ordinance 77, would like to offer sir rebuttal from what you just heard, you're invited to come up. Seeing none, we're ready for item 6, ordinance 78, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of C. Wilson. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 78? Anyone? Mr. Hadley, give us your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
Wade Hadley, 407 Stone Meadow Road. We're asking for a C5 here. It is an extension of the existing C5 to the east and to the north. And the developer's here tonight, and he is planning on putting a car wash and a daycare center on 3 of the 6 acres. If you have any further questions, I'll be glad to.
Any questions for Mr. Hadley? Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Hi, I'm going to take a note out of the question line from the RPC. This is my area, and I saw that Publix put a driveway like straight through to this property. And would you consider putting a very nice sidewalk all the way around and a crosswalk so people could cross over to that driveway and walk to Publix if they put in a sidewalk on the other side?
Well, I'll have to defer to the engineer and the developer.
We need to be careful not negotiate
Yeah.
rezoning up here
No,
contingent.
I understand, but just something to think about. I'm not
I
asking
understand.
for.
You've made
But
the
as
point.
you look at it, I mean, these are things that we miss. I noted, I'm asking that because I saw that you will have to make road improvements. And I was just asking, when you make those road improvements, it's not the typical road improvement that we make in our community, but it would be nice to start adding those since you already have to do it.
I just got a nod from the developer, but as the mayor spoke, we can't
Yes,
have
we can.
contingencies.
But I'm just putting the seeds out there
Okay.
these days.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Hadley? Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Real quick, I was just thinking, I know this intersection was brought up last week about the traffic. How does, I guess, what you're planning on putting, like you said, a car wash and a daycare, how does that impact?
I don't know if it's
Do you
been
know
a
by
traffic
chance?
study, Cal, or?
He'll get an opportunity, Mr. Hadley,
Okay.
in a minute.
Okay.
If you want to defer to him, he'll get an opportunity
I will
next.
defer to Cal. I don't know if
Okay.
there's been a traffic study done.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Hadley? Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience? Mr. McKay? He looked at you. So give us your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
Cal McKay again, 1545 Madison Street, McKay Burchett and Company Engineers. There are road improvements. The Publix developer on the other side of Pea Ridge, from the onset, I think we've met with the mayor about them wanting to put a traffic light there at Pea Ridge and 101st. That's been studied. Traffic signal is warranted and it's being designed right now, all private money. With the road improvements are also required to Pea Ridge, and at any point in time, the street department can require sidewalks for anything. So, if that helps.
Councilperson Marquis, you asked the question, which
Yes.
got him
Well,
up here. You're
he
recognized.
addressed it
Okay.
with the design of the traffic light. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
While you're here. So I was the one that brought up the question last week about the signalized intersection because, of course, across the street from this property is already C5. So you said that the design for that has been done and private money would pay for the signalized intersection?
Yes.
Okay, because last week the city engineer, traffic engineer said we just need the money, so I was confused. So
That's what he's
okay.
You got it on record.
referring to.
Okay, that's why I was making sure.
Yeah.
What is the timeline that you and TDOT have for this to happen?
It's still not completely designed, but as soon as it's designed, the developer plans on moving forward. They own the property. They've got prospects in line that wouldn't be interested in the property unless the signal's there.
Okay. So is the cart coming before the horse? Will the intersection go in before the development is completed?
I think at the informal, Chris Cowan alluded to, and it's come up in our conversations with him that the development wouldn't be allowed until the signal is done. They might be allowed to start. That's kind of at their own risk, but
Okay.
would not get final certificate of occupancies until the signal's complete.
That's a blessing. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. McKay? Thank you, sir. Anyone in the audience wish to speak against Ordinance 78? We're now ready for item 7, ordinance 79, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Progress Properties. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 79? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 79? Now ready for item 8, ordinance 55, 2022-23, an ordinance amending the city zoning ordinance of the city of Clarksville as it pertains to lot coverage and cluster subdivision regulations. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 55? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 55? That completes our public hearing. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Mayor, I move we go back into regular session.
Motion been made and properly seconded to revert to regular session without objection. We're now back in regular session. Councilperson Streetman.
As a reminder, all motions upon the advice of legal counsel shall be for approval. Ordinance 73, 2022-23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of DJ Development LLC, agent Stanley Ross for zone change on property located at the intersection of Madison Street and Village Way from C5 Highway and Arterial Commercial District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District. Both the Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 73. Anyone wish to speak? Councilperson Holloman, you recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Like I said previously, I wasn't here last week. Townhomes are better than apartment complexes, and it's unfortunate that the city of Clarksville is growing and it is getting more dense. Apartments are popping up, and I would say probably need to be in some better spots, some spots not so much. But I mean, like for example, like my backyard, I look at my backyard, count 3 houses down, 3-story apartment building right over the trees. And so it's just, I feel the pain, and I'm going to vote no for it because I do think that's what y'all want. And so that's my piece. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I'd just like to remind the council members that we only get to say yes or no to the zoning. Once it's passed, then it goes to the commission. And I've been to most meetings in the last 14 months, and over again, I've heard once this is passed and once the builders present a plan that is within legal regulations, then they have to pass it. I mean, they cannot say no by law because, that's the way it is. So we've, like many of you received notices about how we were going to do 2 entrances off of Village Way, and then they came in and wanted a variance after saying they were going to do 2. So I just want you to know that we have to be careful. This is and as we infill is messy and expensive, more expensive. And I repeat the comment from Regional Planning Commission. Many of these lots that have been empty for years have been empty for a reason. And now that land is getting harder to find, we're building on them. Just remember that there is an environmental issue here, and some lots just maybe shouldn't be built on. Or they should be divided and the city should manage them to protect them.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I swore I wasn't going to talk tonight so we could leave. I kind of caveating on to what the previous speaker said. We have got to pay attention to what can currently be built on these zones. There is a atmosphere in Clarksville among the residents that they don't want houses anywhere. And we've talked about it till we're blue in the face how we need doors in Clarksville, but nobody wants the people to be next to them. And I just want to remind the citizens that there was someone up here doing the same thing when they were building your neighborhood. And C5, again, I'm speaking to citizens and to my colleagues the same. Read back over the codes again, because it's a lot. And the amount of stuff that can be put on C5, I know no one wants an apartment building down the street from them. But as with anyone else, if this was in my backyard, I would vote yes for it, and I'm going to vote yes for it today. Thank you.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so again, with this particular case, We have a group of engineers who have the experience to deal with the blue lines because they've already done it with the lot next to it. So they're fully aware of the implications with the state on what's required to maintain those lines. And I think it's better for someone with the knowledge of it to be dealing with this case, which they have already outlined for us in this map of that appears to be untouched based on their their studies that they've conducted of the area. And once again, C5 will still go in this empty spot that they've left there, and they can sell. Was it here? They have in the picture also the driveway access point to it. So ultimately, if they keep, it's the same owner that's keeping the frontage. So if they develop the front commercial, and then let's say for whatever reason this doesn't pass, they develop the rear commercial, that's also how traffic will potentially come in, which C5 commercial, that is a lot more noise to the residential regardless of the buffer zone. So, I mean, I think you're going to get a lot more noise pollution, and overall, just it's a lot more in C5 than R4. So that's all I have to say about that.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of adding on to what the previous speaker said. Probably out of a majority of zoning cases that I've heard in the past, this one seems to have a little more supervision over it because of the Tennessee Department of Environmental and Conservation involvement, which a lot of properties don't have that. So there's more oversight on the development of this property based on the state's involvement. And I think there might have been some confusion. I understand that Mr. Gillespie was concerned because the hash lines go all the way back to the property line. That doesn't mean that they can develop all the way to the property line. That just means they're rezoning, like a previous council member said, they're just rezoning that whole piece of property together. They do have to follow the buffer guidelines. And of course, that extra TDEC restriction. And I feel like when neighbors have conversations with the people who are getting to are looking to develop next door to them before things happen, sometimes you can come to an additional agreement as far as buffers and that go. And also the landscape buffers based on what goes next to residential. The distance might be very similar, but the density of what can go there is clearly defined in the landscaping buffer. And from personal experience, I was in a similar situation where actually R4 went next to us. Our neighbors had the discussion with the developer. We actually got a nicer buffer because of the concern. So there's still, I think, if this passes, there's still an opportunity for the neighbors to have that discussion with the developers. And peace of mind, the fact that TDEC is involved in this gives that extra layer of oversight. So I will be voting for this. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
8 yes, 4 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 73 is passed. First reading. Councilperson Streetman.
Thank you. Ordinance 74, 2022, 23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Chris Blackwell Construction for zone change on property located at the intersection of Crossland Avenue and Martin Street from R3 3-family residential district to R6 single-family residential district. Both the Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 74. Councilperson Redd, you recognize.
I'm going to abstain because I own the adjoining property. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Smith, you recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say something about the street pertaining to this ordinance. We remember that we discussed this at our executive about how narrow the streets are. And I think the fire department said that there was not enough room to turn around. And so I'm saying that we need to vote against this. If you like, that's up to you. But I'm going to be voting against this because the streets are so narrow, the school buses can't even go down there. I used to drive the school bus over there, and that was part of my route. And I couldn't go down there, so I had to put the kids out in the middle of Crossland Avenue, and they had to walk down Martin Street. So it's a very narrow road. And I just think that we need to consider, should we really vote this in. But I'm not gonna be voting for this. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand the concerns of my fellow council member. However, I do want to remind everybody that changing this from a R3 residential district to an R6 single-family residential district is actually decreasing the density that's going to be available. More homes could be built if it was left as an R3 than if they do this and change it to an R6. Also, one of the benefits that's being added to this. Yes, ma'am. They show us on it. But one of the benefits also that's being added to this is that you can, there will be a turnaround there where actually fire trucks can be able to now get in there, turn around, and be able to go back up. And I'm not 100% sure on it, but I would think that may be the case as well for school buses. Again, I can't speak for certain on that, but I would think if a fire truck could, a school bus could as well. But again, I'll be voting in favor of this because again, when we looked at this over a year ago, we were looking at something that was going to increase the density from what it is now. This is decreasing it from what it is now, and I think it's going to be beneficial to the area.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to reiterate what previous council just mentioned, I did actually speak to Mr. Blackwell about this case, and he did tell me that the frontage of his property on Martin Street, all of that will be widened, as well as in the development pictures that he sent us for both, if it was an R3 and an R6, that new street that he's going to put in is going to have like a turnaround point as well. And with that improvement to the road, he told me that fire trucks and school buses will be able to make it down Martin Street because of that. The road will be wide enough for them to turn around at that point. And that regardless of where it goes, he does plan to develop it, whether it's R3 or R6, but the road improvements will be made either way. Thank you.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I hate to kind of touch back on what other people said, but I did take notes last week. Under the current R3, up to 36 units can go in, and under the proposed R6, the maximum would be 28. Chris Cowan did mention that at the developer's cost, upgrades and widening would have to occur to the front of Martin Street. Water upgrades would also have to take place at the expense of the developer, and that the fire department will require turnaround like previous speakers mentioned. So I feel like this would improve not just this property, but also other properties that lead up to that. So I will be voting for approval. Thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Mayor, upon my study of R6, it was set up for smaller lots. So if you have smaller lots, you can put more apartments or whatever it is you're going to build on that lot. So my study of R6 showed that it would bring in higher density. So I'm confused that you all are saying that this would be a lower density, because my study of R6 showed, and we have discussed this at length, R6 was for smaller lots where you can get more houses or apartments on that lot. And so I don't know how it's lower now. You all are saying it's lower, but not based upon evidence. It is not. But I heard you say you're going to widen the street. That sounds good. But I have some oppositions from some of the residents there who live over there, which is some of my, I know them. Okay. Well, thanks anyway.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Last year when this came through, I remember getting a lot more emails about it than we did this time. I think, I'm sorry for sounding like a broken record. Once again, we have a situation where an owner is eager and determined to do something on their property. We tell them no, they go back, they get innovative, they adjust the things that we ask them to adjust, they present us with something better, and I think when they do things like that, when they put that effort in, first of all, thank you to the builders and developers that do that. And second of all, I think we should take a hard look at the fact that they're listening to the complaints. They're listening to our complaints. They're listening to the complaints of our constituents. We are in crazy times. We have growing pains. Growing pains hurt. These people are trying to, a lot of them, granted not all of them, but a lot of them are trying to do things to help out all of the issues that we have. And I just wanted to say that and to consider that because a lot of times we beat them up. And just for the record, I'm not running for reelection, so don't say that I'm just saying this because I'm in someone's pocket. No one gives me money. Thank you.
All righty, Councilperson Zacharias, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify a point that's kind of been tossed back and forth. Yes, an R6 lot is smaller than an R3 lot, so it is a greater density of lots, but an R3 lot has 3 units in it. So a greater density of lots will mean a smaller or a lower density of actual residents in this case. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
9 yes, 2 no, 1 abstain.
Ordinance 74 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 75, 2022, 23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Concord Ventures Group LLC, Richard Garrett, agent for zone change on property located at the intersection of Oak Street and B Street from R3, 3-family residential district to R4, multiple family residential district. Both the Regional Planning Commission and staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 75. Anyone wish to be recognized on ordinance 75? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 75 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman.
Ordinance 76, 2022, 23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Rick Rita Homes LLC for zone change on property located east of Fort Campbell Boulevard and north of Idlewild Street from R1 Single Family Residential District to C2 General Commercial District. The Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 76. Anyone wish to speak on ordinance 76? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 76 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman.
Ordinance 77, 2022, 23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Jonathan Blick for zone change on property located at the intersection Liberty Parkway and Delmar Drive from R2 Single Family Residential District to C2 General Commercial District. Both the Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 77. Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say, listening to what the one of my constituents has said, because of the commercial building that is planned to be built in her neighborhood and the trash and the problems that she's having for children to play, I will be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mayor. So just like I just had this glowing recommendation for listening to the developers in these situations, do what you told us. And it doesn't happen often, but it does happen on occasion that something is told to us in these chambers and then it goes and that's not what happens. In this particular case, I told you I like your idea. It's a good idea. And I'm just asking, do what you told us. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on ordinance 77? Are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
8 yes, 4 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 77 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Ordinance 78, 2022, 23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of C. Wilson for zone change on property located at the intersection P Ridge Road and Sandbar Drive from R1 Single Family Residential District to C5 Highway and Arterial Commercial District. Both the Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 78. Anyone wish to be recognized on ordinance 78? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 78 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Ordinance 79, 2022, 23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Progress Properties LLC for zone change on property located at the intersection Scott Drive and Birch Road from R1 Single Family Residential District, C5 Highway and Arterial Commercial District to R2A Single Family Residential District. Both the Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 79. Councilperson Zacharias, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so everybody knows how I feel about adding residential density to tiny town, but that's actually not what I'm going to talk about today. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Tyndall for making himself available to me today twice, so I could talk to him about this particular zoning application. I am familiar with the property. If you'll look at the map in that northwest corner there that's kind of cut out, that's actually where somebody tried to build a towing lot wrecker yard last year, right next to that residential area. That's kind of why we did that other thing. But something that people might not be aware of when it comes to this property or this zoning is, and I only learned today after talking to Mr. Tyndall, is the Regional Planning Commission and the county are looking at a couple sites in this region or in this area to put a school. And for both cases, the site that they are looking at, or the sites that they are looking at for an elementary school, are within the parental responsibility zone. And this is a neighborhood that has no sidewalks. In fact, right here at the corner of Knotgrass and Birch Road, that's where that Cindy Brown Park is. Currently, it's in the back of the subdivision. Anybody that's going to that park is walking there on the road without the benefit of a sidewalk. And adding or increasing the residential density to this area is going to force, or it's going to cause a lot of people to be driving down those roads, same roads that are shared by kids that are currently walking to the parks. This is a perfect example, I think, of an opportunity to pump the brakes. Let's improve the walkability in the area before we increase this from R1 to R2A. And just as a side note, sidewalks to schools, this is something that I intend to keep alive as we build new schools. So for the budget folks who are getting ready for next budget season, if we're looking at a school in this area and this neighborhood is going to be in the parental responsibility zone, I am going to hope to make progress towards getting some sidewalks in this neighborhood as well. Thank you.
Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So, the market's gone rental. It's we used to have a pretty active buyer's market, people buying single family homes, but with the interest rate increases, that's just not happening anymore. It's causing more and more people to rent, and you see that reflected in rental prices. I did some averages. I took the median rent price for December, and I went all the way back to 2017. And the reason I did December is because typically the market dies, and so like when the market is really, really slow, you look at it at the bottom, and so that way it's like, so if I picked like September or some other random month, it could be all over the board, but December you can pretty much rest assured it's going to be a slower month comparatively. But 2017 to 2018, we saw a 19% increase. From 18 to 19, we saw 7.6% increase. 2019 to 2020, 9%. From 2020 to 21, we saw a 4% increase. And from 21 to 22, we saw an 8% increase. That's pretty substantial. And you can take into effect for inflation as well, because inflation is probably like 8 or 9% right now. Typically, probably it's about like 2 or 3% a year if you're looking at average normal years. But rent rates going up. So that just tells me that more and more people are moving to Clarksville. And if they weren't moving to Clarksville, then the rent wouldn't be going up, supply and demand. But I just wanted to share that and just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to piggyback off the last statement, interest rates did start going down like today. I've heard this from multiple realtor friends, and yay. Thanks.
Okay. The yeas have it. All right, anyone else? Are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
7 yes, 4 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 79 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 55, 2022, 23, first reading. Referred back to the RPC on 12/1/22. An ordinance amending the city zoning ordinance of the city of Clarksville, Tennessee as it pertains to lot coverage and cluster subdivision regulations. Both the Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 55. Anyone wish to be recognized on ordinance 55? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
11 yes, 1 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 55 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman.
That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. We're now ready for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be removed for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 50, 2020-23, this item has been withdrawn. Ordinance 57, 2022-23, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the mayor through the city attorney or his designee to conduct negotiations and enter into an agreement for purchase of certain property to be used as a fire station. Ordinance 58, 2022-23, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the mayor through the city attorney or his designee to conduct negotiations and to enter into an agreement to acquire property for expansion of Dixon Park, or should negotiations fail, to pursue condemnation through use of eminent domain for acquisition of property for a public purpose for expansion and development of Dixon Park. Ordinance 59, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Bryce Powers for zone change on property located at the intersection of Louisiana Avenue and Laura Drive from R2 Single Family Residential District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 60, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of J&N Enterprises for zone change on property located at a portion of a tract located north of Tinytown Road, east of the Haddington Drive Street stub, north of Danbury Drive, east of Barker's Mill Road and Torrington Lane, and west of Sandpiper Drive from R2 Single Family Residential District to R2A Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 61, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Rita Home Builders for zone change on property fronting on the west frontage of Cave Street near the northern terminus of Cave Street from R3 3-family residential district to R4 multiple family residential district. Ordinance 62, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Anthony Weinrich, doing business as ADW Investments, for zone change on property located at 2 parcels fronting on the north frontage of Duncan Street, 135 plus or minus feet west of the eastern terminus of Duncan Street from R4 multiple family residential district to R6 single family residential district. Ordinance 64, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Habitat for Humanity for zone change on property located at the intersection of Elder Street and East Union Street from R3 3-family residential district to R2A single family residential district. Ordinance 65, 2022-23, second reading, an ordinance amending the operating budgets for fiscal year 2023 for governmental funds to add additional funding to the Capital Projects Fund and General Fund, amend the Pandemic Relief Fund and the Vehicle Replacement Fund. Resolution 45, 2022-23, a resolution approving appointments to the Community Health Foundation, the Museum Board, the Senior Citizens Board, and the Tree Board. Resolution 47, 2022-23, a resolution approving a certificate of compliance for sale of wine at Quick Trip Market located at 1265 Rossview Road, and adoption of minutes from January 5th.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll entertain a motion, please. Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of the consent agenda. Councilperson Streetman, you wish to be recognized on the consent agenda.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to pull item number 1, ordinance 50, 2022, 23, and item number 9, ordinance 65, 2022, 23.
Thank you. We'll take up ordinance 50 right after the consent agenda and add ordinance 65 to your finance committee agenda.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to register a no vote on ordinance 60-2022-23 and also abstain from the museum board appointments under resolution 45-2223. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Butler, you're recognized on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to register a no on item number 3, ordinance 58-2022-23. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized on the consent agenda.
Yes, I'd like to register a no vote on number 4, ordinance 59, 2022-23, and ordinance, item number 5, 60, 2022-23.
Okay, so noted. Anyone else wish to be recognized on the consent agenda? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote on the consent agenda? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
The consent agenda is adopted. We are now going to take up item 1, ordinance 50, 2022-23. Councilperson Streetman, you pull that. You are recognized.
Yes, sir. This is the second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Universal Exports LLC for zone change on property fronting the western terminus of Pruitt Lane, south of Pruitt Lane and west of Whitfield Road from Agriculture District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District. This item has been withdrawn in accordance with City Code Section 1-204B, so no vote will be taken on this item.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about this item? Seeing none, we're now ready for the Finance Committee report. Chairperson Streetman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 67, 2022-23, first reading. An ordinance of the City of Clarksville authorizing the mayor or his designee to conduct negotiations and to enter an agreement for purchase and acquisition of easements and/or property rights for a public purpose for the Hazelwood-Pishka School Sidewalk Project. Finance Committee voted in favor of approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 67. Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion that we take up items 1 through 5 all together since they're all of a similar nature.
Okay, proper motion.
Second.
Proper second. Any discussion, any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, we are now ready to vote on the motion to consider ordinance 67, 68, 69, 70, and 71 as a group. Are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Okay, the motion to consider those ordinances as a group passes. We are now discussing those ordinances as a group. Anyone wish to discuss these ordinances as a group? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote on all 5 items? Hearing none, seeing none, are you ready to vote? Let's vote. As soon as Madam Clerk gets through typing. Okay. All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinances 67 through 71 are adopted, first reading. Councilperson Streetman, Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Hold on one second. I apologize. I'm having to flip back and forth here. Ordinance 65, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance amending the operating budgets for fiscal year 2023 for governmental funds. Ordinance 146, 2021-22 to add additional funding to the Capital Projects Fund and General Fund, amend the Pandemic Relief Fund and the Vehicle Replacement Fund. Make a motion for approval.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 65. Council Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
I would like to propose an amendment. This is amending it to, the city is a recipient of a grant from the Community Health Foundation and Aspire for the construction of a section of a greenway off of Crossland Avenue for $300,000. Since this is going to cross fiscal years, we're going to need to create a capital project for this work to begin. I've passed around just page 1 of the budget to show the budget amendment on there where it's been highlighted, and there's not any kind of impact as far as in the ordinance. It's just the attachment only. So that's the only amendment that it would be, is to the actual attachment.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of this amendment. Any questions? Seeing none, are you ready to vote on the amendment to ordinance 65? All members, please cast your vote on the amendment. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
The amendment is adopted. We are now back on ordinance 65 as amended. Any further comment or question about ordinance 65 as amended? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
11 yes, 1 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 65 as amended is adopted. Thank you, Chairperson Streetman.
Thanks to that motion to combine them all, my report is concluded.
Okay, thank you. We're now ready for the Gas and Water Committee. Chairperson Holloman, you are recognized.
All right. First Gas and Water Committee report. It's kind of exciting from a very boring perspective, but so the Gas and Water Committee for the stats for December, the gas system distributed 856.4 million cubic feet of natural gas, averaging 27.6 million cubic feet per day. The water plant pumped 594 million gallons of treated water into the system, averaging 19.2 million gallons per day. That's a lot of water. The sewer plant treated 427 million gallons of sewage, averaging 13.8 million gallons per day. The call center handled 9,970 calls, with each call averaging 3 minutes and 30 seconds in length. The service department completed 4,593 work orders and responded to 461 after hours calls. The building division read 605,000 meters with an accuracy of 99.9% accuracy. The engineering division approved 11 utility plans and currently has 28 going. And I'm really excited about this committee, and it's I'm really looking forward to learning about gas and water and the systems and everything, and just showing y'all some numbers and stats and fluctuations and stuff like I did with public safety. But that will conclude my report.
Thank you, Chairperson Holloman. Any questions about this committee report? Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Just a comment. Go do the tour at the plant. It's really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Which plant? We got a bunch of
The
them.
water plant.
Water treatment.
Sorry.
Okay. That's okay. And the new one too. Okay, thank you. All right, we're now ready for Neighborhood and Community Services Committee. That would be Chairperson Shekina. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. We have some exciting things coming from the Neighborhood and Community Services. The report for today. The first project, I'm going to talk about 3. The first one is our lead hazard reduction program. That program is aimed to test homes, and then if they find any lead, they remove the lead at no cost to the residents. And they're looking at homes that were built before 1978. According to the Neighborhood and Community Services, there are about 10,000 homes right now in Clarksville. But just trying to reach those particular residents. A lot of them are older. That is the challenge right now for that department. So anyone that would know someone who's interested in getting their home tested at no cost, and as well as remove the lead, the number is 931-648-6133. That's 931-648-6133. And again, we have about 10,000 homes that were built before 1978 in Clarksville that may qualify for that. The second thing I want to talk about is the Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Program, the TBRA. That program is an income-based program. It's aimed at supplementing individuals who may be at risk for losing their home or victims of domestic violence. The Community and Neighborhood Development partners with United Way on this particular program. And again, that same number as far as the previous program, 931-648-6133. And the last thing I want to mention is the Emergency Home Rehab Program. Again, a great program. We offer up to $20,000 in grants to assist low-income families with emergency needs such as roofing, fixing those, repairing busted pipes, a lot of plumbing and things like that. So again, they wanted me to stress to the council and to the community that they just need all of our help in making sure that the residents know of these particular services that we're providing, and then guiding them towards the right direction. So again, our next committee meeting will be on the 13th of February, and I'm just grateful for the great committee and some of the members that serve on it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chairperson Shakina. Have any question about that report? Seeing none, we're now ready for the Parks and Recreation Committee. Chairperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. During the month of January, Parks and Recreation welcomed over 12,000 residents to its facilities, the bulk of those coming from Kleeman Rec Center and Crow Rec Center. The Parks and Rec Committee met on January 10th. We discussed our 2023 meeting schedule, vacant positions, and received project updates. The next meeting is going to be held on February 7th. That is a slight departure from our normal schedule just to avoid Valentine's Day. Upcoming events with Parks and Rec. Tickets are still available for the new Clarksville social event on February 3rd at the Wilma Rudolph Event Center. You can visit clarksvilleparksrec.com to get yours before the event sells out. On February 18th, please join us at the Wilma Rudolph Event Center for Cook It Up Clarksville, where some team members from Outback Steakhouse are going to walk guests through a recipe and an interactive class, and then you get to eat what you make. So hopefully you learn something. Release your inner polar bear. Oh my goodness. By diving into the chilly waters of the Swan Lake swimming pool for our first polar bear plunge on February 11th. Look, I read the comments on social media. I know some of you would love to see your council members thrown into a swimming pool in February. I will be there. I know there are a couple other council members who have pledged their support as well. Mayor?
You're out of order, Mr. Chairman.
Well, in that case, please bring towels and blankets for this guy. And one of the great things about this event is all of the proceeds from this event go towards giving free swimming lessons to some of the underserved children in our community. So swimming is a life-saving skill, and we want everybody to have it. Finally, on February 23rd, from 2 to 7 p.m., the Kleeman Rec Center will host Black History Heroes. The event will celebrate Black History Month with guest speakers and a theatrical performance from children in the center's homeschool program. The event is free, and there will be light food and beverages, and we hope to see you there. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions about that report? Will there be paramedics standing by if we're eating our own food?
I hope so.
Okay. All right. We are now ready for the Public Safety Committee report. Chairperson Red, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Our theme for our report is we're hiring. We are 41 officers down. If you consider deployment and other things, we're 60 officers down. That's out of an allocation of just 343. But the chief assures us that we are still going to get the job done and keep up with the same standards. The chief wants me to remind everybody as well, we have the 48th Citizens Police Academy that's coming up. Go to clarksvillepd.org to sign up for it. There's a lot of cool stuff that you're going to learn there, like crime scene investigation, canine patrol, or canine operations and patrol, and much more. And the chief wants to thank all the citizens of Clarksville during the bad weather for staying off the streets as much as they could to keep the traffic down. And he said he really appreciates that. And a special thank you to the street department and to the garage. And that concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Any comment or question regarding this committee report? Seeing none, we're ready for the Transportation Streets Garage Committee. Chairperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. The TSG reports are as follows for January of 2023. The Transportation Department transported 42,344 passengers for the month of January. The annual ridership has gone up 14%. Demand response for the total for the month of January was 3,421. Please remember, you can use your CTS spot apps to find the location of all buses at any time. Next, we have the street department. For the month of January, the total work orders was 168. Paving on the following streets has been completed for Pollard Road, Greensboro Court, Chelsea Court, Ashbrook Lane, Trelawny Drive. The McIntosh asphalt plant is closed for their annual maintenance this month, and so paving will begin on these streets when they reopen. That will be on Old Farmers Road, Summerlawn Drive, Royal Oaks Subdivision, Heritage Estate. Planning Commission reviews completed for the month of January was zoning cases 8, preliminary subdivisions 1, site plan reviews 1, and the grading permit reviews were 9. Capital projects are going on now, and the active ones are sidewalks. There are 17 that is going on right now. Designs 16, right-of-way acquisitions 1. Active road projects are 7, design 2, right-of-way acquisitions 1, construction bidding this month 1. There are 2 bids for constructions that are open now for Spring Creek Parkway and Exit 1 improvement. That concludes the street department. We will now move on to the city garage. The report for the city garage, the total number of work hours was 451. The total number of work hours is 981.50. Total, I'm gonna give this one, total tire cost was $20,508.83. The total parts was $58,000. This is for all vehicles, $520.63. The fuel cost for unleaded was $2.93 per gallon. The last delivery was January the 30th. There was an increase of 6.5% from December 30th, 2022. It was $2.75, but it increased. Okay, the diesel fuel cost was $3.52 per gallon. The last delivery was January the 25th. There was an increase of 22%. It was $2.89, but it went up to $3.52. This concludes all of my reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment or question regarding this committee report? Seeing none, we're now ready for new business. First item under new business is Ordinance 56, 2022-23, an ordinance amending the operating budgets for the fiscal year 2023 for governmental funds to remove funding for the Roxy Regional Theater. Councilperson Butler, you are the sponsor and you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I motion to accept ordinance 56-2022-23.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Councilperson Butler, you're the sponsor. You're recognized.
I actually just realized I'm a dinghy and I did not type up my amendment, but technically I don't need to type up an amendment because I just want to erase the last whereas paragraph. How do I go about amending it in that way legally? Just print it and exit off maybe?
You can do it on the second reading. Ms. Jones, do you want to speak to that question?
I believe at this point in time, you can make that verbally and then later submit it.
Okay, so I want to motion to amend ordinance 56-2022-23 to erase completely the last whereas paragraph.
Okay, you heard the explanation of the amendment, which would delete the last whereas clause in the ordinance. Any comment or question regarding the amendment? Councilperson Smith, you're recognized on the amendment.
Yeah, Mayor, that has to be written and passed out to us before we can vote on that per the law, per our codes.
Well,
It has to be written.
technically it is, but the attorney advised that we could just delete that whereas, which says members of the Roxy's Board of Directors resigned in protest, and its own executive committee cleared the theater's director of any wrongdoing. Executive committee cleared the
She
theaters.
just wanna, delete that part.
Just delete that one
Okay.
whereas.
All right.
Okay, any other question or comment regarding this amendment? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote on the amendment? Every member, please cast your vote. Every member voted. This is on the amendment. Remove that last whereas. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
This amendment is adopted. We're now back on the ordinance as amended. Councilperson Butler, you're still recognized.
So I did do that amendment because I agree with the speaker who suggested that last week. I don't think that it was about any wrong, that they absolved at any rate. I do not have anything additional to add that I did not say about this last week. I would just ask that we vote and get on with our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be recognized? Seeing none, are you ready to vote? We're now voting on ordinance 56 as amended. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
1 yes, 11 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 56 fails. We're now ready for item 2, Resolution 46, 2022-23, a resolution requesting the Parking Commission reconsider their decision and reinstate the issuance of free parking passes to the elected city council persons in the city of Clarksville, Tennessee, and to the elected commissioners in Montgomery County, Tennessee. Councilperson Reynolds, you're the sponsor, and you are recognized.
Yes, I motion to approve.
Motion been made and properly seconded to approve Resolution 46. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
All right, thank you, Mayor. For everybody here, I shared amendments, and anything in green I've added, and anything in red are the removals. And just to kind of summarize it, the change in our parking privileges, as we discussed last week, were made in September 2022. The members of the city council were not notified of the changes. I received notification of the changes when I received a warning ticket in January. I was at a meeting with a resident doing business. When I began asking questions, I learned of the vote in the Parking Commission and learned that at the time, the members of City Council were not authorized to park in the city parking lot, and our parking tags were no longer valid. We are not considered city employees and therefore did not qualify for the parking in the lots. They had already gathered the license plates for the staff, but they did not reach out to us for our license plates. I began asking why this was done. I've received many different responses that range from there are people taking advantage of the tags. The original motion only included county commissioners, but because cities should not pay for the parking. And then it was amended by Mr. Ryan Bowie to include city council members. At the meeting, a city council person indicated that they did not want to vote for their own privilege while acknowledging that this was the first time that they heard that their parking pass was no longer valid. My aggravation was a lack of communication and a lack of respect. And honestly, many of the things that have come forward are because I started asking questions of who said why was this done. And last week, Mr. Palmer but the process, so last week there was a discussion centering on the financial impact of the city, but this process actually allows us to send a note to Mr. Palmer with, which is a formal motion inside of the Parking Commission, and it makes it pretty much mute. It's a wash. All we're doing is adding workload to Mr. Palmer and or our clerk. There was also a comment regarding tax on the advantages for parking, but again, this resolution is only for us parking to do city parking. It's not a privilege to park anytime, anywhere. It's a privilege I'm asking, or we're asking to only do business, only park when we're doing business with the city. I also understand that some of the speakers have parking privileges either by virtue of their workplace or well-earned status. This resolution was to cover the commissioners who were never part of the addition for parking, and city council persons that do not have status. We did receive information in an email from Mr. Palmer, which I think is appropriate, but an email is not policy. Stating it in an email is not policy. So I've changed this resolution to ask again that the parking commission review and make a motion to acknowledge and put in writing the policy, the recommendations that were made by Mr. Palmer, so that they'll be in writing and not just an email that can be taken away depending on when Mr. Palmer leaves without notification. So all I'm asking for at the end of this resolution is that we formalize, that the parking commission formalize the policy that Mr. Palmer sent to us in an email. Any questions?
Okay, you've heard, is that an amendment?
Yes, sir, I gave you one, no?
I got it. Thank you. I'm coming from everywhere. Okay, thank you. I do apologize. Okay, you've heard the explanation of the amendment. We would need a motion, Councilperson Reynolds, on the amendment.
All right, I thought I did.
We did on
and
the
there was
main
a
motion.
second.
And seconded. Okay, thank you. We have a list. Councilperson Butler, you recognized on the amendment.
I guess yeah, because it is the amendment. I guess my question is, so this is a sense of the council, right? Are you planning on bringing it as an actual policy, like a legislative policy?
My sense of the council is being sent to the parking commission to basically clarify their motion and include the recommendation, because right now, new business in the city parking pass does not reflect this language. So all I'm asking in this resolution is that their next meeting, they clarify and add this recommendation into their minutes.
So I like this. I like this one. I like that it's basically you and Mr. Palmore got together and made it because you used his, I liked what he sent us today. I like that you added it in here. I like this as it is now. I think that we should consider moving forward if we wanted to try to put this in the code to go about doing it so that we don't run into this situation again or a situation like this. If that is what this body wants. So, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Mayor, may I clarify?
Yes, please.
So just so you know that this resolution as it stands is not requesting to go into the code. It's requesting that the parking commission added in their minutes and as a motion to adopt.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilperson McLaughlin, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask the Assistant City Attorney a question on this?
Sure. Ms. Jones, if you wouldn't mind, come to the mic.
Not the loudspeaker version. Previous speaker brought up one of my concerns as well, but I'm kind of confused between what powers the old parking authority had versus the current parking commission. So my first question is, does the parking commission have the authority to pass policies that affect the parking commission without city council approval?
I believe, I would rather look into that before I answer that in the affirmative.
Okay, then my other question would be, if they do, where are these policies posted for public consumption if they're not in the code?
If it's okay with you, our CFO, Lori Mata, has more experience.
Been over the parking.
Great job keeping short answers.
Ms. Mata, if you would, please attempt to answer.
I think I can answer both. So under the parking commission, when our charter was changed, it was changed to the commission.
Mm-hmm.
And they set policy, they set rates for parking. And they are all kept in Appendix A in the city code.
Okay.
That's where the rates are set and what the regulations are.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I just, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Councilperson McLaughlin, you still have the floor.
I'm done. Thank you. That
Okay.
concludes my report.
Good report. Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I too like the new addition to this because again, it is just reiterating what our parking director has told us, and that way everybody has a reference point to fall back on. So I do like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Red, you're recognized.
I believe we spoke at the executive committee meeting. Does this amendment, does this take away or give to the pass? I mean, will it still be the same as it is now, basically? So we would no longer have the parking. Okay. Well, and Ms. Mata mentioned there at the executive committee meeting that this is a benefit to the council in which we cannot change pay or benefit. And so much so, she said it could be something that could even be required by the IRS. And I think we'd be wise to postpone this 1 month to have Lance Baker take a look at it too, because it might be, and I'm not against this, it's just that we may have to stagger it for the years that it won't affect us, but those that get elected later type thing. But my motion would be to postpone this for 1 month.
Are you making that in form of a motion? Yes. The motion's been made and properly seconded to postpone this amendment, because we're still on the amendment, until the March regular session. I've got a list. I'm going to call your name. If you'd like to speak to the motion to postpone, you'll be recognized. Councilperson Streetman on the motion to postpone. Councilperson Holloman on the motion to postpone. Councilperson McLaughlin on the motion to postpone.
Yes, Mayor.
You're recognized.
Since we're not determining what the policy is, now that that's been clarified, that this is sending a suggestion to the parking authority, they're the ones that would make a decision. I don't see any reason to postpone. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds on the motion to postpone. You're recognized.
I would like to, one of the additions on the front page that I added was a sense of the city council request that the city legal department, the parking commission and parking manager review the city charter, the charter that you're referring to, Charter Article 2, Section 17, to ensure they are in compliance with the paragraph below, as well as in compliance with any such language in the Montgomery County Charter. And then I said adjustment shall be approved prior to the beginning of the term of office for which a councilman is elected. So basically I addressed that and I asked them in the whereas statement to please review that as part of their review at the Parking Commission.
Okay, you've heard further explanation. Anybody else wish to be recognized on the motion to postpone? Councilperson Red on the motion to postpone.
Again, just so much that's in here. And I just wanted to say too, whenever we get to the main question, I'm going to move to postpone that as well. Perhaps I should have done that after this vote, but I think I didn't want to have this fail or whatnot. But I think that we would just be wise by how much this is in there and let Lance advise us on it. So
Okay, thank you. Councilperson Smith on the motion to postpone. You're recognized.
I just think, thank you. I just think that we need to have time to read over this. I'm not against it. Just want to make sure, we dotting the I's and crossing the T's, because over here on this new business, under this link on the back, the appendix A on the back, it says the city council members and the county commission have been given parking passes that allow them to park anywhere, anytime. So I was listening to Lance, Attorney Baker, and he said that they don't have the authorization to change anything dealing with our parking. So I would like to hear from Lance before we decide to vote on this. And that's just the reason why I think we should postpone it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I think Mr. Baker said we are not, by state law, have the ability to change our pay and benefits, not necessarily parking, but parking is a benefit. Okay. All right. Any other comment or question on the motion to postpone? Councilperson Reynolds on the motion to postpone?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay.
I would like to remind you that really the decision is not up to all of us. It's really up to the Parking Commission, and it's on them. And Mr. Baker does, I believe, attend their committee meetings. Is that true?
No, he does not.
Sometimes. But they would invite him, and that would be part of the conversation at the committee, because we don't technically vote on our own. We're not voting. This is telling them to relook at it. We're not telling them what to do. We're telling them to relook at their very vague motion and to clarify it and based on these. So once it got to their area, if they needed more time, I didn't set a time on this. They could postpone while they speak to Mr. Baker and figure that out.
Okay, we are now voting on the motion to postpone this amendment until the March regular session. This is a vote on the motion to postpone till the March regular session. All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
4 yes, 7 no, 1 abstain.
Motion to postpone fails. We are now back on the amendment as presented. Councilperson Streetman on the amendment as it's presented.
For the question.
Question's been called for. Any objection to the question on the amendment? Hearing none, seeing none, are you ready to vote on the amendment? We're voting on the amendment. Every member cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
11 yes, 1 no, 0 abstain.
The amendment is adopted. We are now back on the resolution as amended. Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just gonna say my piece and I'll be done. I'm gonna pass this out. I asked Ms. Mata to pull me some revenues and profit and losses from the Parking Commission. So I'm just gonna pass that out. Y'all's. So if you look on the second page, let's see.
2 pages.
It's 2 pages, yeah. Sorry, I should have told y'all.
Let's let the members get in front of them and then you can proceed. Everybody got it? Okay, you're recognized.
Sorry. So on the second page, it says total parking commission revenues, and it's got let's see, where am I here? Excuse me. Profit loss. Second page at the bottom, and in parentheses that's profit, and if it's not in parentheses that's the loss. So for 2017, we had a $38,000 loss. We had a $41,000 loss. 2019, we made about $49,000. But then we went ahead in 2020, we lost $7,000, we lost $16,000. Jump ahead, and we made $3,700. And year to date, so far for FY23, we've made $172,000 off of parking. That is a massive success, and I just want to say, thank you to the Parking Commission and thank you to Mr. Palmore just for all your hard work. And I felt like that just needed to be highlighted. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Call for the question.
Question been called for on the resolution as amended. Any objection? We have an objection, so we're on the board. We're voting to cease discussion. It requires a 2/3 vote, which is 8 of us. So we're voting to cease discussion. Every member, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
7 yes, 5 no, 0 abstain.
Question fails. We're now back on the resolution as amended. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So I too was a little caught off guard by the fact that my parking pass, I mean, that's not how you want to find out that you've been parking illegally for 3 months is in a council meeting. But I do have to oppose this for a reason. It has nothing to do with parking specifically, but I see this as a blurring of those separation of power lines that I am so fond of. Here we have a legislative body that is attempting to influence the internal policies and procedures of the Parking Commission, which is an apparatus of the executive branch of our municipal government. And with this particular issue, it's something that very few people, in fact, I would say 1/3 of the people who benefit from a change in that policy are the ones voting for it. And I'm uncomfortable with it. I'm not saying that some clarification isn't needed. But the parking commission answers to somebody, and the person that they answer to answers to somebody, and none of those people are us. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Red, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say amen to the previous speaker. And again, that, you know, this is not a life and death situation or somehow that we're going to lose a lot of money or whatnot, like a contract has to be signed and something that pressing. And I want to make a motion to postpone. I would like council to take a look at this a little more in depth. I was hoping after executive committee, but that's just a week. But that'll give them, and I know they've got big fish to fry, bigger than this probably, but this will give them a whole month to take a look at it and kind of advise us if we would be breaking a rule by taking away a benefit to the council. So I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm not saying I just want to postpone just to be postponing, but in this case, I really think it'd be wise to. So that's my motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone till the March regular session?
Yes, sir.
And properly seconded. Anyone wish to address the motion to postpone till the March regular session? Seeing none, hearing none, we are voting to postpone until the March regular session. All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
8 yes, 3 no, 0 abstain.
Motion to postpone is adopted. We are now ready for items 3 and 4. Items 3, you see, we've been down this road before. Consideration of Resolution 48, 2022-23, a resolution authorizing reapplication for zone change for property located at the intersection of Earl Slate Road and Sanders Road. It requires a 3/4 majority for us to consider Resolution 48. I'm going to call on Councilperson Red just to provide a little clarity for what we would be doing in Resolution 48.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'll make a motion for approval.
Motion been made and properly seconded. You're
The
recognized.
applicant, he inadvertently missed the council meeting to speak at public hearing. And then he wasn't quite aware, and this zoning request was voted down. And I think he was speaking with the RPC, and he had some indication that probably, and at that, if he wanted to speak to us, he was going to want to make a change from the R2A to R2, which would to go from R2A, which is not multi, but now I'm looking for the word. Cluster, cluster. So he wanted to just come back to R2, and he was going to ask us at that time and at that meeting if we would vote to send this back to the RPC, just so he could change it to an R2. And he asked me, what should I do? And I called Lisa and got it put on the agenda here. So I hope you give him consideration for sending this back. So, and after that, after we do this, if we bring it back up on the resolution, I'll make the motion to send it back to the RPC. Thank you. I just want to let you know that's why it's being brought here.
Thank you. The motion's been made to consider Resolution 48, 2022-23. Councilperson Shekinah, did you wish to speak to the motion to consider? Yes, ma'am. You are recognized on the motion to consider.
I don't think we should consider it. The residents, they were here. They voiced their concerns about it. All of them were elderly. I also spoke to the owner of this particular property. He did miss it. He said he wanted to build one house on it. He can build one house on it as an R1. It was also disapproved at the RPC by the staff, recommended disapproval by the staff, as well as by the commissioners for various reasons. So I don't think we should do that. We just had this case last month, actually less than 30 days, we just had this case, and we voted against it, and I think we should stand by that.
Okay, Councilperson Streetman on the motion to consider. You're recognized.
I think I just want to clarify, it was stated by the sponsor of this that if this if this resolution authorizing the reapplication passed, then he would immediately request to have it sent back to the Regional Planning Commission. I'm quite certain you actually can't do that. What this is asking for is a reapplication, which means it can't just be sent back. He's going to have to go through the entire process again, pay the fees, everything with that, to make it anything different. And also I wanted clarification too, that you said that he was doing cluster, or he wasn't doing cluster. I didn't quite understand what you.
It was, originally it was brought up as R2A cluster zoning. He just wanted us to speak at the council to have it sent back as a R2 instead of R2 cluster, R2A cluster. He wanted to make it an R2 only and wanted to speak in front of the council. But I'm not asking you to approve it tonight. I mean, but I do know that he has to go back through all the steps, just like it's a regular, and go through all the application process and go in front of the RPC, the staff and the board,
Okay.
and all that. He understands it. He's just not wanting to
gotcha.
wait the year, I guess you can say.
Thank you. I too will, like my fellow council member, I'll be voting against this. We just voted on this a month ago, and as was previously stated, I mean, this was recommended for disapproval by both the staff and the Regional Planning Commission, as well as this vote was 10-3 against the zoning. So there's no real reason to allow it to come back up so early again. So I think he can wait pretty much like everybody else does until it's time. He wouldn't have to wait a full year. He only has to wait for a year from the point that he applied for it. So at that point, he could go ahead and start the process again then.
Okay, we're on the motion to consider Resolution 48. Councilperson Butler on the motion to consider.
Question for the previous speaker. When you say the vote was 10-3, are you talking about at RPC or our vote was 10-3?
Councilperson Streetman.
Thank you.
Okay,
Our vote.
okay. All right, any other questions regarding the motion to consider? Councilperson Red on the motion to consider.
Thank you, Matt. Typically in the past, it hasn't been a problem. And again, he's got to go through all of the procedures again to bring it, to go back to the RPC, go through the staff and all of that. So again, I just ask you to vote to allow him to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilperson Smith on the motion to consider.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're recognized.
Nothing against what all has been said. In all due respect, I think we need to give the man an opportunity to be, reconsider, give him some time. He said he had a change in mind. Let's give him a chance. He's a person that paid taxes. He owned land. And so, hey, let's give this person a chance. That's just my thought. 2 cents. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds on the motion to consider.
Yeah, I would just like to add that at times our residents are feeling like it's almost a bait and switch, like we're just kind of just wait it out. They'll come back and we'll let them come back, and we're just wearing them out because I'm gonna oppose it just because we said no, they should wait a year. It's really gonna be about 9 months, and mostly out of respect for the residents that show up, and just it's getting, I mean, for them it's getting to be too much.
Councilperson Red on the motion to consider.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say there's nothing sinister here. There's no bait and switch. This is a substantial change that he's wanting to go from cluster to regular. Always before, there didn't seem to be, since this time I've been on the council, a problem with it. But if there was no change at all, I would understand that he just wanting to come back to have another bite at the apple. And that's why the rule is the way it is, that you have to wait a year. But this does have a substantial change. So I'd ask you to vote for it.
Councilperson McLaughlin on the motion to consider.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. One is that we didn't receive any contact from this property owner asking for us to consider this and explain himself what he was trying to do. And second is, I'm afraid that if we pass this, we're setting precedent for everybody else to try to come back before the 1-year deadline. So I will be voting no. Thank you.
Councilperson Smith on the motion to consider.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think we ought to reconsider this because he did have a council member to represent him to bring it back. He don't have to come back. He has a representative here that is speaking up for him. And I also think that the man has a change here. He has made it known through the council person that he has a change, and I think we need to consider this. It doesn't set a precedent for anybody because we deal case by case, not by on what everybody thinks about a whole collaboration of people or groups or whatever, but we deal based on case by case. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be recognized on the motion to consider Resolution 48? Seeing none, hearing none, this is the motion to consider Resolution 48. All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
7 yes, 4 no, 1 abstain.
The motion to consider passes. Okay, Councilperson McLaughlin, you recognized.
I apologize. I meant to vote no.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
7 yes, 5 no, 0 abstain.
Okay. Motion to consider needed 3/4 majority, which is 9 of us, excuse me. I'll get it right in a minute. It fails. So because it did not receive the necessary 3/4 majority, we cannot consider Resolution 48. We're now ready for mayor and council member comments. Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
All right, so I have two things real quick. As a reminder, tomorrow is the first Friday of the month. We have the reading program down at Rotary Park for the kids. Bring them for story time and free books and snacks. Starts at 10:15 a.m. And then the second thing is I had a Eagle Scout contact me about a project that he was doing. He heard about my little free libraries around the city that I was doing. And so for one of his badges, he also did 3, and he would like help placing one of them. So if there's a resident out there, contact me who would like to be a steward to one of the libraries. He needs to put it up before the end of the month so that he can get his badge. So if anybody wants a little free library, please contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just the whole parking thing did bring some emails that came in, and one of my constituents, and this is because I know we have a parking authority member here, our commission member here. He commented that basically you have to have a smartphone to be able to park downtown, and that's something that should be considered for people that don't have smartphones for the future. And I do know that Mr. Palmore mentioned they're doing a comprehensive parking study, so I just wanted to get this comment on the record that to consider all methods of payment. My mom can barely answer her phone, let alone run a smartphone, and so I just want to get that on the record as a concern. Thank you.
We do have analog meters that allow you to feed coins into the old-fashioned way, the old-school way, but those are on street.
Right, on street, but
Right.
parking lots.
Okay. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized for comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Did I beat you to the Habitat Punch today? Okay. So applications are open for Habitat for Humanity. The Habitat for Humanity of Montgomery County, Tennessee's home ownership program began accepting applications yesterday, and the application period closes on February 28th. If you would like more information, you can visit the Habitat for Humanity website at habitatmctn, that stands for Montgomery County, Tennessee, habitatmctn.org. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I just wanted to remind everyone about the Healthy Yards at the Science on Tap on the 7th of February at Strawberry Ale Works on the 2nd floor. Join us, learn about how to plant native plants in your yard, and let's increase our pollinators. Thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized for comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say that February the 1st was the beginning of Black History Month. And I would like to say to all of you as council persons and anybody out in the audience, let us walk as if we're being the change to make things better for the city of Clarksville, for all people. And so if you don't know about Black history, take your children to the different events that are being held in this city and let them learn about Black history. What Dr. King said, let us keep the dream alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to be recognized for comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Without objection, we're adjourned.